Alwyn Griebenow, a local attorney practicing from Port Elizabeth. I am the attorney of record for Pastor Omotoso in the criminal charges that are currently brought in against him, for which he has been arrested and for which he is currently still in custody. On the 19th of April this year, I was contacted by one Mr. Bongani Tele, a local attorney from Durban, who informed me that his client, Mr. Omotoso, was wanted to be seen by the Hawks here in Port Elizabeth, and whether I could confirm that they indeed wanted to see him, what it was in connection with, and in order to set up a meeting between the Hawks and Mr. Omotoso, as well as his legal representatives. I then did so. I phoned Captain Magwankana, a female captain in the Hawks here in Port Elizabeth, the same day, the 19th of April 2017, and confirmed the following with her. After asking her certain questions, the following was revealed. Number one, that they wanted an interview with Mr. Omotoso. Number two, that no SAP case docket had yet been registered, that they only received an inquiry. Three, that they were not intending to arrest Mr. Omotoso. And lastly, that they had no warrant for Mr. Omotoso's arrest. After discussions with her, it was arranged that we will fly in Mr. Omotoso and we will be at the offices on 12 noon, the 20th of April 2017, in order for them to have their interview with Mr. Omotoso. I phoned Mr. Bongani Tele, informed him of such, and arrangements were made for him to fly in with Mr. Omotoso the following morning. As a result of flight times, Mr. Tele contacted Captain Magwankana in order to inform her that the flight that they could get in order to fly from Durban to Port Elizabeth only lands at around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and therefore they will not be able to make the 12 o'clock appointment, but they would only be there around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Captain Magwankana seemed to have no problem with this. This was later confirmed when I spoke to her in order to inform her that the interview would be delayed, not the flight. The interview would be delayed, and that we would only be able to have the interview around about 1500 hours or shortly thereafter. I want to make it clear that as a result of what was said to Mr. Omotoso and to Mr. Tele, a return ticket was booked for Mr. Omotoso to return to Durban that same evening on the 8 o'clock flight from Port Elizabeth back to Durban. On the 20th of April, myself and Advocate Price, who I briefed to assist with Mr. Omotoso, went down to the Port Elizabeth airport, where we awaited the arrival of Mr. Omotoso. Very shortly before 3, I noticed that there were members of the police in uniform running around the police building. I noticed that it were members of the police's tactical response team, that they were armed with automatic firearms, and that they were obviously dressed, and that they were busy there with some sort of operation in order to apprehend a person or to safeguard a building or a VIP or something of the sort. Shortly thereafter, I also noticed that members of the Hawks arrived at the airport. I went and spoke to some of these members whom I know in order to establish what their presence at the airport was about. They did not want to assist me, they did not want to speak to me. Eventually, after some time, I was referred to a colonel of the Hawks, who was also present there at the airport. The person I was referred to, sorry, not a colonel, it was a Major General Nogwanya. I approached him and asked him what their presence was therefore at the airport, and I was informed that they were just there on business. I asked whether they were there for the pastor, and I was informed that no, they were not there for the pastor, and the impression was created by the Major General that he didn't even know who the pastor was. In any event, shortly thereafter the plane arrived, and when the pastor walked into the domestic arrivals hall, there was a shouting amongst the police, and members of the Hawks and TRT stormed into the domestic arrivals hall, shouting. The impression was created that they did not know exactly what they had to do. Some of the members of TRT ran out of the hall to the outside where the aeroplanes were on the landing area. Whilst they were running out there, a shot went off. Members of the public were scared. There were women and children that were ducking inside this domestic arrivals hall. And shortly thereafter, I noticed them coming with the pastor out of the men's cloakroom. It was later established that after his arrival, the pastor went into the men's cloakroom in order to relieve himself, when members of the Hawks stormed in there and grabbed him, cable tied him, and brought him out of the men's room. We tried to speak to the pastor. We were denied the opportunity of speaking to him. We were denied the opportunity of explaining to him who we were, because at that stage I nor Advocate Price had met the pastor. He was taken away there. They rushed him out of this hall, past us, bumping us out of the way, ignoring our pleas to tell us where they were going to, and eventually bundled him in a car, and off they went at great speed, and with sirens and blue lights they left the premises. We tried to make contact thereafter with Captain Magwantana, but she didn't take our calls. We then had, in order to try and establish where our client was, and in order to protect his rights, we had to approach the Port Elizabeth High Court after hours in order to get an urgent order that we be allowed access to the pastor, and that we be handed a copy of the warrant on which he was arrested, and also that they immediately produce him to the court, because we did not know where he was. When we served our papers on the police, they were legally represented at the court that particular evening, and after we had talks, they agreed to an order by the judge in order to compel them to tell us where he was detained and to give us access to him so that we could consult with him. At court, they told the duty judge that they had no warrant on which Mr. Omotoso was arrested, and that they arrested him without a warrant. In any event, eventually we got to court. When we got to court, they told us that they opposing Mr. Omotoso's bail. The reasons given to us was, number one, that he was a flight risk, and that he would flee the country if granted bail, and number two, that he was an illegal immigrant, and that his papers to be in the country was not in order. Now, at this stage, we're waiting for judgment in the bail application. Judgment has been reserved by the presiding officer in the matter, and she is due to deliver judgment on the 9th of June. That is Friday this week. However, from the evidence in court, it became clear, one, that they lured Mr. Omotoso and his legal team, including myself, into a trap in order to have him arrested. In other words, they lied to us about the interview, and all along they had the intention of arresting him once he came to Port Elizabeth.